Hello everyone and welcome back to Kobean History. Today I'm starting a new series about the anatomy of castles. So we will go through different aspects of the castles, different structures, how they developed and what they were used for. Today we will have a look at the moat of a castle. There are different types of moats, but we will go over that later in the video. But in general, a moat is a deep and broad ditch, either dry or filled up with water. It's a feature dug out by humans, generally surrounding a castle. You can also have some moats inside of it, but we will go over that later. So a moat could be used for a castle, but also for any other fortified structure or a town. It usually provides the first line of defense, and during the Middle Ages you'd rarely see a castle without some kind of moat, whether it was a dry moat or one filled with water. That was unless the location where the castle was built already formed a good enough defense. A moat made access to the walls difficult for siege weapons, such as siege towers or battering rams, which would have needed to be brought up against the wall to be effective. And other siege tactics, such as the practice of undermining, so that means digging tunnels under the castle walls in order to cause them to collapse, was made very difficult as well when there was a moat, especially if it was filled with water. Now I will go over how the moat as a feature developed. In older fortifications, such as hill forts, which developed during the late Bronze and Iron Ages, simple ditches were built around it as a defense to slow down the momentum of an attacking force. And these ditches aren't too far off from later moats. The word moat derives from the Old French mot, meaning mound, and originally referred to a central mound on which a castle was built. We can see this in early motte and bailey castles, where the motte part of it refers to this part of the fortification. So it was rather a mound instead of a ditch that was dug. But it later came to refer to an excavated ring around a fortification, what we would now call a dry moat. But if a source of water was nearby, it could be diverted to fill up the moat, adding an extra defense to it. Now I will go over the difference in moats. There are a few different types. We will start with the basic dry moat. It's similar to those ditches of hill forts that we talked about earlier, but dry moats would have been wider and deeper. They had to be deep enough so that attacking forces couldn't easily cross them, and wide enough so they couldn't just jump over it or build a small basic bridge over them. Sometimes with dry moats, spikes could also have been put at the bottom of them, forming an extra defense as well. We also have neck ditches. Earlier I mentioned that castles in a strong natural position might have not needed moats, but even these castles could have had some kind of moat, but only on the side without any natural defenses. Here a dry moat would have been dug across the narrow part that connects the peninsula on which the castle was built. This type of dry moats are called neck ditches. This was a common feature of hill castles and spur castles, and this created a bottleneck where the only viable way into the castle would have been over the bridge or drawbridge that crossed over the neck ditch. Moats could also be built within a castle or town to separate different elements within it, such as separating an inner and an outer ward. These types of moats are referred to as cross ditches. During the Middle Ages, there were more castles without a water-filled moat than you might have expected. This was because it was hard to fill up the moat with water if there wasn't any river or lake in the close vicinity. Of course, if there was one nearby, they would have diverted it into the moat, but in Western Europe, water-filled moats only became more popular in the late Middle Ages. In Eastern Europe, however, it was another story, because they would have an abundance of natural water sources spread throughout the land, and in some places, due to the high groundwater table, moats could have even filled up themselves after being dug out. Wet moats surrounding a castle are now seen as romantic, but this view is a later invention when castles became more used for aesthetics rather than defense. In fact, the castles that did have water-filled moats during the Middle Ages were not that pleasant, as these moats were generally used as a dump for food waste and human waste, making it more like a cesspool, which commonly is not seen as very romantic. In some places, wet moats evolved into more extensive water defenses, such as natural or artificial lakes surrounding a castle, or dams and sluices being built. So that was it for this episode. Thanks for watching this video, and if you're interested in more videos like these, you can check out my channel to find more videos about medieval times, as well as other topics throughout history.